What's going on, guys? This is Uche Njoku and Sneaker Principal podcast, I think, but this is actually office hours. So just wrapped up Saturday school not too long ago, and I wanted to record this quick episode before I head home. And what I have been thinking about actually is having to do with podcasting. So people always ask me, like, where do you find the time to create content, and is this a hobby? You know, they always question this whole space that I've created for myself around creating content. And one of the things that I've learned over the course of, 5 years now? Is it 5 years? 4 years. So my first podcast episode was during the pandemic, and this would have been 2020, sometime March, April. I think it was more like April. And since then, I don't even know how many episodes I've recorded. They're varying styles and just trying to find my voice in that space. But one thing I've done is I have been creating content. You know, sometimes off and on, but I have been creating content. But now, what I want to share with you is what I've learned, and also why I think it's important that all school leaders master this space in social media as far as creating, having a podcast, creating some kind of content. So here's a list of things that I've learned over the course of the past couple of years doing this. So I have my notes here. You know, I'm a little dyslexic, ADHD, all the above. So I have to organize myself. If not, I'm going to go on a rant. So first thing I've learned is the power of visual storytelling. And what do I mean by that? As a school leader, you are a public figure. You perform on a daily basis in front of audience, whether it's your parents, your staff, your students. You are visually there. But one thing that I feel a lot of school leaders don't do very well is controlling their own narrative, control the narrative of their school community, what is put out there, or what is the story being told about the school. And again, that story is going to vary depending on what's happening. You know, if some schools are struggling with test scores, and that becomes the focus. The school is just so bad because of its test scores. Some schools might struggle with low retention rate for whatever reason, or excuse me, or I don't want to say violence, but maybe behavior in the school is not up to par. But those things don't truly make up the total sum of the school story or of the leadership. There might be so many other great things happening, but no one ever knows about that because the last thing they speak about is that last thing that was publicized. And when we don't control the narrative of our school communities, other people will do it for us. So as a school leader, being able to be the voice, to speak about your school community, to speak about what's happening within the community, to be able to present visually and orally the story. Very, very important. So it's interesting because when I started creating the podcast, I was doing it for myself. I wasn't really thinking about others per se. But what ended up happening was people started to link me with the content I was creating. And not only that, eventually they started to link my school with the content because a big portion of my content is about school, about leadership, and I can't speak about education and leadership if I'm not speaking about my own practices and what's happening in my own space. So as a result, I really believe it brings not just attention on myself, but attention on my school community, because everybody's going to link me to, hey, that's Uche Njoku, the sneaker principal, you know, a brand that happened unexpectedly, but also he's the principal of that school. And wait a minute, is what he's saying in alignment with what's happening in these spaces where he functions within that role, and they can go and see, you know. And again, it creates a multidimensional experience about what my school community is, you know. So I think for school leaders, that's one thing, being able to control that narrative. The other thing too is building that personal connection. So often, as a school leader, you're being pulled in so many different directions. And the work itself forces you to be one way most of the time because you're focusing just on these of what's happening day to day in your school. But I really believe that if you show me a successful school, you're showing me a dynamic school leader. And often what happens is the dynamic nature of the school leader and and leadership team is often hidden behind the work. And I think being able to create a personal connection, like this is my principal, this is the leadership team of the school. I hear their voices, I see what they've done and how it's connected to what they say the mission and vision of the school is. And it shouldn't just be once in a while, if we have parent-teacher conferences or if we have an emergency assembly, but it should be something that's consistent. So I see a lot of schools that now have like a weekly podcast where it's produced by the kids. You hear from the principal, you hear about the sports scores and what's happening in the school. And these things are very, very important because, again, it keeps the outside world connected with the school, but also it tells the school, how important the key stakeholders are in being part of that story, right? The other thing here is engaging diverse audiences. You hear school, you think teachers and students, but you don't hear or think about what about a potential business partners in the community, agencies and corporations and foundations that are often looking for schools to connect with, and all they know is school names, maybe school addresses, maybe the websites. But you go to the websites, you see the same thing. You only see school mission vision, and we have classrooms where we teach math and science. But what are those other things that are so dynamic within the school community that you never know what member of your audience might see and say, hey, I wouldn't work with that school. Okay, that school has an amazing science program, and my company, is engaged in science and technology or STEM or STEAM, and we want to invest in that school committee. We want to bring the kids into our space and show them what we're doing or be a partner in that space. People won't know what you're doing if they don't know what you're doing. And this platform, like podcasting, allows that to happen because you can cover those kinds of topics. You can bring in students and teachers and say, hey, let's talk about what's happening in the school and create that and really establish a content for the outside community so they can see what's happening. The other thing, too, is educational opportunities and resource sharing. I don't necessarily use podcasts for this, but it's something I'm thinking about, one thing that I do in my school is I'm always taking pictures. I'm always recording snippets of what's happening in the classrooms, in the hallways, in clubs, and sharing that. Because, again, going back to the other things I shared, for the world to be able to see what's happening in the school is amazing. But the other thing, too, is it's happened where people have reached out and say, hey, I see that thing you're doing. I know somebody's doing something very similar, and maybe you guys should partner. So being able to bring those additional resources and opportunities to our school community is very important. Again, if people don't know what you're doing in your space, then you're literally functioning in a closed box, and opportunities that might really bolster your school community are kind of lost. Let me see here. So, tips. Some people might say, okay, that's wonderful. You're able, podcasting can do all these things for you. Engage in social media through this medium. I get it, but how do I start? And I'll tell you this. Right now, as you look at me right now, I do have you see the mic, and I have a whole setup here. Unfortunately, I don't have a secondary camera to show you my whole entire setup here. But yes, I'd have a soundboard, I have a mic, I have a laptop here in front of me, an iPad, I have a camera recording. But I want to talk to you about the camera recording when we talk about where do we start from. Right now, the camera that you've seen me recording on right now is literally my iPhone 15 Pro Max or Max Pro. Okay, it's an iPhone. And I'm literally connecting my audio into the phone. But remove all the fancy stuff, just the phone. You can mount your iPhone on a tripod and no mics, get some people around, or just you yourself talking to the camera and just record content that you upload to your school website. It could be LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn because I feel like I'm speaking to my community of educators on LinkedIn, but I also use Facebook because I know there are people out there also that share the content. Definitely Twitter is a place that I post a lot of content because a lot of our feeder, my Twitter content feeds into our school website so parents can see what's happening in the school. So again, you want to get started, literally just start recording, and yes, in the beginning, you're going to feel goofy because I'm telling you, one of the weirdest things to do is talking to a camera. Until this day, I'm still not comfortable with it because right now I'm looking at this camera and what I see is literally the back of my iPhone and the three circles. That looks like an alien staring back at me. But I also know that what I'm doing is projecting into the general world and the general audience. And again, this is where you start. Just start creating content. I heard somewhere recently somebody say that your first 20 posts or your first 20 podcasts or pieces of content are the most important and also the most useless. And I was like, what does that mean? What do they mean by that? They're most important because those first 20 allow you to really build your capacity and make your mistakes and get over yourself and get comfortable. But also, those first 20 will end up being your worst videos, right? Because in time, you get better and better and better. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing here at my school is creating those spaces to really engage with with a cast of students and teachers and talk about what we're doing in the school, share ideas, and really give a window to the parents of our students of what's happening here, but also our partners as well, because I'm going to say one more time, there are so many schools on this planet. I'm in the South Bronx. There's so many schools in the South Bronx between charter schools, private schools, public schools. And the question is, how do you separate one school from the other? And the way you do that is by making sure the world knows what you're doing within your school. So with that being said, this is Uche Njoku, Sneaker Principal, and enjoy the rest of your day. And if you have any thoughts, comments, please share in the content. If I could be of any use to you and supporting you, do the same thing. And of course, I think like, share, follow, that good stuff. Be well.